You're listening to the Cat Breeder Sensei Says podcast. This is your show host, April Catito, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about intact males living together. Growing catteries at some point will acquire more than one working male, but can they live happily together at peace and harmony? Let's find out right after this short message.
Do you want to learn how to become a successful breeder of pedigree cats? Now you can. For the first time ever, enroll in an online training course that takes you step by step through everything you need to know to get on the right track. Visit catbreedersensei.com to sign up today and use code podcast21 to get $25 off.
Okay, I'm back and I have to give you my disclaimer. All of the information that you hear in this podcast episode is based on my personal experience or my personal knowledge. You may certainly have a different experience than I do. And the best way to do things, well, is your way. Okay, so the general rule of thumb is one male to every 3 females. That's the ratio. Now, it's not always the case. Of course, it's going to be breed specific, it's going to be cat specific, and it's going to be need specific. Some males will do fine with 1 female. Some, maybe they'll require more, 5 females. They may be really active. So with intact males, just like females, they're all different. They have different personalities. Some of them are passive and laid back. Some are more energetic, more aggressive, especially when it comes to females. So in what circumstance would a breeder of pedigree cats need more than one intact male? Well, there's several different reasons, but you're not able to keep any of your own kittens, your own females, unless you have 2 males, because they'll all be related to your only sire. So if you are a growing cattery and you're trying to expand your cattery, or you want to keep your own lines to breed in the future, you have to have at least 2 males. Owning more than one intact male also is required for genetic diversity. So you'll have to bring new blood in once you start keeping your own females, and you need new blood to make genetic diversity work. So for me, it was time for me to acquire a new male, a second breeding male, whenever I was ready to start keeping my own kittens and building my own lines inside my cattery. So I could breed females to 1 male and keep the offspring and mate her with the second male, and vice versa. So I could go back and forth. And you can do that until, they're too closely related and you're not able to do that anymore. So 1 generation. For me, that's my preference. I don't want to practice any inbreeding in my cattery or line breeding. I'm just not familiar enough with it. I know that some breeders and a lot of breeders practice inbreeding and line breeding to fix types and things like that, but that's just not something that I have gotten into yet. So maybe in the future when I have educated myself more about that. Males are highly territorial, and one of the things that they do to claim their space is spray. So they do that by marking their area with cat spray. It's a little different than just normal urine. It's a very pungent smell that they raise their tail straight up in the air and just spray on vertical spots, either walls, furniture, bushes, clothes. They can pick all kinds of nice things that they can spray on. But that's one of the things that they do to claim their territory and mark their space. They do this also to let the girl know that they're there and they're ready to mate. And it's a very unique and identifying smell that the females are familiar with. So do all intact males spray? No, they don't. And this episode isn't about the male spraying. It's really about being territorial and things that they do to indicate that, they are claiming their spot. So if you have a male that sprays, it might be an indicator that he's a more territorial male. Maybe he's a little bit more aggressive than a cat that doesn't spray. So definitely not going to be the case for every intact male. So don't take that as a science that spraying or not spraying is an indicator of whether or not they can live harmoniously together. That's not what I'm saying. But if you have a cat that sprays, maybe they tend to be a little more territorial than one that doesn't. So if they are territorial, does this mean that they can't share their stud quarters with another intact male? Well, I don't know. It depends on the cat. I think it's really an individual scenario. I think you have to put the males together and test it and see how they interact with each other. Some males are perfectly happy living by themselves in their stud quarters, and some prefer company, whether it's another intact male or a neuter to share their space with in their life. So it's really, you're going to have to know your cat and know what's going to work for them. And really, what it's going to come down to is testing and observing and seeing for yourself. I've had 3 intact males so far. My first male lived alone in the stud quarters for 18 months. And then he got a roommate. The roommate was brought in at 4 months old. And so he grew up there in the cattery with my intact male, who was getting all of the girls. Neither one of them ever sprayed, and there was never any trouble between the two. I retired the original male at 2.5 years old once the new boy had proved himself as a sire. So once he left, the new boy lived by himself until he was 20 months old, and then I got him a roommate. So the new roommate is, the plan is to keep them together for a couple of years, so maybe until they're 3 or 4 or 5 years old, and to be able to keep my own lines and go back and forth between the two males, having a male from, keeping a female from one male, using him for the other male. That's my intent. So far, the new male is 9 months old, and I have not had any issues. They are getting along fine. The new boy is not sexually mature just yet. So, I haven't gotten into the battle for the girls yet, but so far they seem to get along fine together. They snuggle together. I don't see any bickering or hostility between them at all. So far, so good. Nobody's spraying. Nobody is fighting. That does not mean that scenario is not going to change for me in the future. And if it does, I'll have to make a decision at that time on, what to do. I only have 1 intact male space that 2 can share. So, I'll have to make the decision then whether or not I'm going to, continue to keep 2 or just go back down to 1 until I have the opportunity to have more space. So maybe I'm just lucky so far. I don't know. I think I'm totally lucky when it comes to no spraying and no fighting between my intact males. They're in a shared space, and I think this is really, I just kind of go with, what I'm seeing. I think that them being able to see my females, know that they're there, know that they are just across the gate, and they can smell the females and see them and watch their body language. I just think that helps with keeping the spraying down. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I have another breeder who I am currently mentoring and working with, and she set her cattery up exactly like mine. She has 2 males. She built, it's like a sliding door, but they can see through it, and they can smell each other, and they kind of interact, but they cannot get to the females. They just know they're there. It's very visual. She has not had any issues with the males fighting or spraying either, and they are both about 1 year old to this point. So I know that can change. I have another friend who had 2 males living together, intact males, and they did absolutely wonderful. until they were about 2.5 years old. Now, these cats grew up together from babies, and they grew up together and shared the space. And then one day, something triggered one of them, or both of them, and they got into a big old cat fight. She had to throw towels on them and separate them, and it ended up really ugly. They had scars, it was a bad fight. They scratched each other, and she had to take one to the vet. And she says never again will she put two intact males together to live in the same space. So you see, everybody has a different experience with putting two males together to share a space. It's really, something that you have to test yourself and see. I know another breeder that is in Hungary. She has a whole heap of males that live together, like an entire army. She might have 8 males that are sharing the same space, and I've seen that, in more than one time. Do they fight? Probably. I mean, I even have, neutered males, my pets, that live in the house, and they bicker from time to time and get into little spats. No, it's not violent, and, nobody gets hurt. But I see them, duking it out and boxing and stuff like that. So I think it, for the most part, sometimes you're going to have little scuffles between cats. I know the females do it. I witnessed them having little episodes with each other. So it's part of, cats living together probably to have little tuffles, should I say. But if it becomes dangerous and they're hurting each other, harming each other, or causing stress, then that's something that you want to address and, separate them and decide what to do at that point. So one of the things that I think is important when it comes to intact males living together is introducing any newcomers when they're very young, say 4 to 5 months old. So if you have an adult male and you're thinking about adding a second one, get the new boy when he's young, when he's a kitten, and do the very slow introduction period for your new male. Don't just throw him in there and expect them to, accept that. That really doesn't happen too well with any cat. So do a very slow and gradual introduction period between the new male and your resident male so that he doesn't feel intimidated. He doesn't think that the new kitten is there to take his resources, and eventually introduce them into the same space and see how the posturing goes and make sure that they're going to be friendly with each other and, take it from there. If they can grow up, get used to each other, and not feel a threat, then hopefully these two males can live together harmoniously for as long as you need them to. And that is, that's really awesome because they have a companion there and, they're not there living by themselves. Make sure that each of your males have their own resources. You give them equal attention and they get their share of females. So once, both of your kittens or your cats are of mature age and they're ready to mate, you have to kind of plan it out. If you have 2 males, then you need enough females to be able to go around and keep both of these males happy, and so they're not getting jealous and start to fight each other. Let me also recommend having a Feel Away plug-in. To me, it's a remarkable calming pheromone. It's great for multi-cat environments, especially intact males. I definitely have one in my cattery on the boy side. I have one on the girl side. I have them in my home because I have multiple cats living together inside my home. To me, I think they're awesome. I know not everyone agrees with the Feel Away, but if I'm running out of Feel Away or it's empty, I can tell. Like, that's when I see some scuffles going on and maybe a little bit of tension and they're, kind of bowing up at each other and stuff. The ones especially that are a little more sensitive, I can tell. I can tell when my Feel Away is out. And I'm like, okay, we must be out of Feel Away. I go over there. Sure enough, my Feel Away jar it's empty, and I put a refill in, and things start to calm down within a day or 2. So try the Feel Away plugins and see what you think. See if you think they are helpful in reducing stress. I mean, you probably know by now that stress is one of the worst things that can happen to a cat or in your cattery. So the more you can do to reduce and combat any stressful situation, the better off your cats are going to be all around. They're going to be mentally happy, they're going to be physically happy, and that's going to make for a very pleasant experience in your cattery. As soon as you add a stressor in, let's say two cats that don't get along, whether it's intact males or females, then it raises the stress level really for everybody, not only the cats but for you as well. And you want your boys to be happy and stress free. So if that means they're happier with a friend, then that is great. Trial and error is going to be the only way to test this in your cattery and see what works for you and for your boys. My hope for you is that you are able to have your two males or more, if you need them, to live together and peace and harmony, and you can start keeping your own kittens and start building your own lines and start working on your lines and your cattery and your name and your pedigrees. And I think that's what we all strive for, is to create a legacy with our name on it that will live on forever. These kitties live on and they carry on the names, and the pedigrees is really what does that for us. So if you want to learn more about space requirements and cattery design, specifically for males, it's in the complete guide to breeding pedigree cats, which you can find on catbreedersensei.com. If you used the code podcast21, you can get $25 off of the course. As always, I want to thank you very much for listening to our podcast episode today. If you liked the episode and you found it helpful, please leave us a review on the podcast platform that you prefer, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Cat Breeder Sensei Says. Until next time, you guys make good choices, and I'll be seeing you later. Bye.